In the summer of 1966, a farmer in rural Ohio looked up from his fields and saw something that shouldn't exist. Coming down the train tracks was a silver blur. It sounded like a fighter jet taking off, a screaming roar that shook the ground and shattered windows. But it wasn't a plane, it was a train, and it was moving at nearly 200 miles per hour. It looked like a metallic Beetle, with a strange sloped nose and two massive jet engines strapped to its roof like missiles. This wasn't a science fiction movie. It was the desperate, dangerous experiment of a dying industry. This is the story of the M497 Black Beetle, the day the New York Central Railroad decided to fight the airlines by turning a commuter train into a low-flying rocket. To understand why anyone would build such a machine, you have to understand the desperation of the 1960s. For 100 years, the railroad was king. But now, the jet age had arrived. The Boeing 707 was flying passengers across the country in hours, not days. The railroads were bleeding money. They were seen as slow, dirty, and obsolete. The executives at the New York Central Railroad were panicked. They needed a miracle. They needed to prove that trains could be fast. They wanted high-speed rail, but they didn't have the money to build new tracks like the Japanese bullet train. They needed a cheap solution. Enter Don Wetzel. Wetzel was not your typical railroad engineer. He was a former Marine Corps pilot. He looked at the problem not as a train conductor, but as an aviator. He told his bosses, "We don't need new tracks. We just need more power. We need to stop thinking like a railroad and start thinking like the Air Force." His idea was simple and terrifying. Take a standard train car and bolt jet engines to it. The bosses gave him a small budget and a deadline of 30 days. They told him, "Don't kill anyone and don't wreck the track." Wetzel went shopping. He didn't buy new engines. They were too expensive. He went to a military surplus yard in Tucson, Arizona. There he found two General Electric J47-19 jet engines. These were monsters. They had originally been used on the Convair B-36 Peacemaker, a massive nuclear bomber. They were designed to lift heavy payloads of atomic weapons, not push a train. Wetzel bought them for $5,000 each. It was a bargain for 10,000 horsepower. Now he needed a train. He went to the company yard and found an old Budd RDC-3. It was a boring, diesel-powered commuter car, the kind used to carry mail and sleepy businessmen to work. It was number M497. They took it to the Collinwood shops in Cleveland and stripped it. They removed the seats. They removed the heavy diesel engines. But the most critical part of the design didn't come from an engineer. It came from Wetzel's wife, Ruth. Ruth Wetzel was a commercial artist. One night, Don was sketching designs at the dinner table. He planned to put the jet engines on the back of the train to push it. Ruth looked at the sketch and shook her head. She said, "No, put them on the front. It looks faster. And there is an old pilot's rule. If it looks good, it flies good." She sketched a streamlined nose for the front of the square train car, giving it a face that looked like a shovel. It was aerodynamic, sleek and aggressive. The crew painted the nose black, earning the machine its nickname, the Black Beetle. The engineers bolted the massive jet pods directly to the roof, right above the pilot's cabin. It was a Frankenstein monster, a 13-year-old commuter train wearing the engines of a nuclear bomber. The test run was scheduled for July 23, 1966. They chose a stretch of track between Butler, Indiana, and Stryker, Ohio. It was straight and flat, perfect for speed, but the danger was very real. American train tracks are not welded smooth like modern high-speed lines. They are jointed rails, short sections of steel bolted together. At normal speeds, you hear the click-clack of the wheels. At 200 miles per hour, that click-clack becomes a jackhammer vibration capable of shattering steel axles. On the morning of the test, Don Wetzel climbed into the cab. He wasn't wearing a conductor's uniform. He was wearing a white crash helmet and goggles. He sat in the pilot's seat just a few feet below the intake of the jet engines. He flipped the switches. The turbines whined to life. The smell of jet fuel filled the cabin. The noise was deafening, a high-pitched scream that drowned out every thought. Wetzel pushed the throttle forward. A normal train accelerates slowly, straining against the weight. The Black Beetle leaped forward. The thrust pinned Wetzel back in his seat. In moments, they were doing 50 miles per hour, then 80, then 100. Outside, the telegraph poles blurred into a solid wall of wood. As they crossed 120 miles per hour, the physics of the train began to change. The air pressure on the nose was immense. But the real problem was the wheels. At high speeds, train wheels suffer from something called hunting. The cone-shaped wheels start to oscillate, bouncing violently from left rail to right rail. If it gets too bad, the train will derail and flip. Wetzel could feel the metal beast shaking underneath him. The steering console was vibrating so hard he could barely read the gauges. But he didn't lift his hand. He pushed the throttle further. 150, 160. The jet engines were screaming at full power. The heat from the exhaust was so intense it was stripping the paint off the roof behind them. They passed the speed trap near milepost 350. The instruments gave the reading 183.68 miles per hour. That is 296 kilometers per hour. Wetzel actually saw the needle hit 196 miles per hour before he began to slow down for the curve. But the official record was set at 183. It was a world record. They had taken a piece of junk from the scrapyard and made it faster than a Ferrari. The Black Beetle slowed down and rolled into the station. The crew was ecstatic. They had proven that steel wheels on standard tracks could handle jet speeds. But the victory was short-lived. While the engineering was a success, the reality was a failure. The jet train was simply too loud for public use. It blew out windows in nearby towns. It terrified livestock. The exhaust blast was dangerous to anyone standing on a platform. And it was thirsty. The fuel consumption was astronomical. The New York Central Railroad collected their data and then killed the project. They unbolted the jet engines and returned them to the Air Force. They took the beautiful streamlined nose off the car. They put the old diesel engines back in. The M497 went back to work as a normal, slow commuter train. It spent the next 18 years chugging along at 50 miles per hour, carrying passengers who had no idea they were sitting inside the fastest machine in American history. Eventually, in 1984, the car was scrapped. The metal was melted down, but the engines had a strange second life. The railroad kept the jet engines and mounted them on a special wagon to use as snowblowers. They were used to blast ice off the tracks in winter, a humiliating end for engines built to carry nuclear bombs. Today, the record of the Black Beetle still stands. No self-propelled train in the United States has ever gone faster. It remains a symbol of a unique moment in history, a time when engineers were allowed to try crazy ideas, a time when a pilot and his artist wife could build a rocket train in a garage and make history. We have high-speed trains today, but none of them have the raw mechanical soul of the Black Beetle. None of them have jet engines strapped to the roof. And perhaps, for the sake of the windows in Ohio, that is a good thing. Thanks for watching Iron Legacy. If you enjoyed this story of speed and madness, hit the subscribe button. And let me know in the comments, would you have the courage to ride in a train doing 180 miles per hour on old tracks? Or was Don Wetzel just lucky to be alive? See you in the next one.